Hi, Roland. It's
Hey,
good to see
Janet.
you today.
Well, it's
Yeah,
good to see you too. I'm all ready for this. I got my coffee.
got your coffee? Great.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to our discussion today. This is a great chapter. It's all about the spiritual journey of the Christian, and we're going to kind of look at the roadmap, if you will, of what the Christian life looks like, and kind of go through the different parts of the journey together. A
I
lot
wonder if
in it.
it's worth just saying as we start off, there really is a lot here, and we would encourage everyone to read this chapter perhaps multiple times. It really is just about seeing the picture, the big picture, and putting all the pieces in place. We simply want to come to a place of having confidence in the process, not feeling the need to master concepts. We're going to focus in one specific area here as we talk
Yeah.
today, but that doesn't mean everything else is unimportant. We'll touch on things, but not be able to
So
spend a lot of time in all of it.
So I would say it this way. We're going to look at the roadmap and we're going to pay attention to when we cross over the river, when we go through the woods, when we're in the mountains, when we're in the valley. But we're not going to talk about the level at this road, turn this way, and at that road, turn this way. And then you're going to pass four gas stations before you see this. We're not going to go at that level. We're going to take just the
Exactly.
general view. Yeah,
Yeah. But again, everyone take the time to read it because it actually is helpful.
it's great. Well, as I read this chapter, I started thinking about an maybe an image or a metaphor that I was given in seminary about the Christian journey. And so, and it sticks with that roadmap kind of theme, right? But it's about being in a car. So you can imagine that, imagine you have this old car and you kind of live in it, and it looks like you live in it, right? And you're just driving down the road, and you see this guy standing on the road, and it's Jesus, and you stop to talk to him. This is kind of your encounter with Christ, and you have a conversation, and you're kind of wondering about him, and so this is just that first stage, right? This interest, this growing, the stage, prevenient grace, right, if you will. And at some point you go, I kind of like him. And I decide I'm going to invite him into the car. And so I let him climb in. We would say that this is salvation, right? And so he gets in the car, but once he's in the car, you become very aware that your car is messy, right? You have old
It's
gym
like that.
clothes in there. There's garbage from who knows how many fast food meals you've had. There's all this stuff in your car, and you're looking around going, I got to clean this place up. This is not okay to have a guest in here. And so, as you continue in this journey, you're cleaning things out of the car as you can. You're developing this relationship with Christ. And then eventually, just as that relationship grows, you go, you know what? Why don't you take the wheel, Jesus? Right. And I know that's a saying that we all hear, right? But but that's a sign of we would say consecration, giving yourself over to God, putting your trust in Him. And a lot of times people say that that is the sanctification moment where you say, "Not my will, Lord, but yours be done." And but we have that moment and it's great, but we struggle and we're like, "Hey, where are we going? Why are we going that way?" And we talk, right? And but we're growing in that. And as we talk and we have those conversations, um, we grow, I think, in trusting in his love in our life. And then we get to this kind of we get to the part of the journey where we just trust and have fun rather
Mhm.
than questioning, right? And that means because now our relationship with him is so good that sometimes we don't even need to talk. We can sit in silence together. And that would be kind of
Yeah.
that end of the spiritual journey together with Christ. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That is really helpful. I can see in that all kinds of ways that we can think about in reality. That gives us a visual that we can hold on to, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the well, it fits well with how he is kind of trying to pack this for us, so that we can get handles on the way that this happens. But that gives us a real good mental picture of what we're dealing with. He actually has a table in the book that expresses four primary stages this classic understanding of the pilgrimage, which is the
Yes.
old word for the journey, right? People used to talk about pilgrimages a lot more than they tend to today. But yeah, so he has these four stages: awakening, purgation, which is a, a weird word, but it has significant meaning. Illumination and union. And maybe we can talk about each of those stages a little bit. Maybe they'll map back onto the little car picture. I think we'd find great value in digging down into this purgation thing, because there's a part that he focuses on that really works for us, and so we'll end up focusing there. But awakening, that's a little bit like where we see Jesus on the road, right? We start a conversation with him,
We
and
have
uh,
this
and
encounter
so
with God. And when you have an
yeah,
encounter with God, you have to go, okay, what do I do with this? Right?
yeah. And you know what? It's really interesting is that is true. People that become Christians have this moment where they didn't see, and now they are seeing stuff in their life.
Mhm.
And I've spoken with enough people across the years in that place, recognize there's lots of people that just don't see anything, and trying to
Yeah.
get them to the point of seeing something can be a difficult process. And sometimes we can even get ahead of what God's doing in that, trying to push people into that moment. But that awakening really is a God moment. You actually see something that you didn't see before.
And when you see God, you have to respond, right?
Right,
You either move toward him or you move away from him, but there has
right.
to
You
be a
swerve around
response
him
to
or
that encounter.
stop.
Right, exactly. Do you stop and have a conversation or do you just floor it and keep going, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah. And as I said, we're gonna unpack the purgation thing a little bit more in a minute. But
Yeah.
there's this illumination.
But before
Uh,
you do that, we
yeah,
could just, so you all are tracking, purgation is kind of getting rid of the sins or anything that's unlike Christ in your life, which would be the cleaning out of the car, right?
right,
You become aware
right,
when Christ is sitting in the car that, oh, wow, this place is messy, and you start cleaning it up. That's in a
right.
nutshell what purgation is.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's right. And again, it's where the illustrations we got to start to work with. But because that leads automatically into this illumination place, which is
Yeah.
this surrendering of, well, maybe it's even so purgation is relating to the messy stuff, but this illumination is relating to the things that I value, the things that are valuable to me, and I'm saying, God, you can have this in my life. It's surrendering those things maybe a little bit, because that is the way we use consecration, right? So
Right.
um yeah,
Yeah, but it's
yeah,
getting over the wheel, right? It's you can
right.
drive now.
and
Yeah.
then uh, and then that final part is the union part, which is this idea of resting in the place where we know that God defines my reality, recognizing that when he turns right, I think we should have turned left. It's okay. I know that
It's
he
okay.
knows, but I got to learn to trust that he sees things that I don't see.
Exactly.
So that's the general structure that we're talking about. The reason why I wanted to dig down into this purgation issue will become very apparent quickly, because it's the kind of language that we use all the time. But he does break down this purgation and getting rid of the things that are actually actively opposed to who God is and who Christ is in
Yeah.
our lives. He breaks that down into four parts.
And
The first
well,
part,
and as you before you say that, like I love the way he breaks it down into these four parts
right,
because it's like he starts with the thing that's most obvious. I should get rid of that. And then
right,
once you get rid of the most obvious, it's like, oh wait, but then there's that left. Let me get rid of that. And
yes,
then it's like, now let's reveal the next. So it's almost a layered, like if
right.
you think about cleaning your house, right? You get rid of the stuff that's out of place. And then you go, maybe I could order some of this better. And then you think, oh, I might need to do deep clean. So it's that layered kind of process.
So the first part of that is we recognize the things that are blatantly inconsistent with wholeness in Christ, and he makes a point that is really worth considering. A lot of those things are actually things that our society and culture says that's wrong. That shouldn't be like that.
So a
And
lot of the obvious sins that everybody would go, that's
right,
not good for you. Why are you doing that? Right?
exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, it also tends to be the place where Christians very often get stuck and define their experience in terms of not doing those things that are blatantly
Yeah.
obvious that we already had an awareness about prior to becoming a Christian, right? It is the first stage in this purgation, not doing those things. So maybe we've been embezzling for the last 10 years and we realize we're going to have to stop doing that embezzling thing or something like that. It's the realization that these activities are actually clearly wrong and wrong by pretty much any assessment,
Right.
which then moves into the next phase, which captures that classic Wesleyan definition of sin, the willful transgression of a known law of God. Some of those things are not necessarily wrong uh, uh, culturally. That our cultures may not say that those things are wrong, but they're harmful and destructive. And God has shown us that this is not right for us, and
Right.
we choose not to do that anymore. It might be different for different people. He mentions the issue of meat, and Paul talks about in the New Testament that some people don't eat this meat for spiritual
Yeah.
reasons. Other people do eat the meat for spiritual reasons. For the person that has illumination on not eating, that would be something that he has to do because God showed him. The person that doesn't eat or does or wherever I'm up to does because they don't see a problem there. But it's what God is saying to us. But the big point he makes is one person doesn't have the right to condemn the other person because that's about their own personal journey with God, which is at that little deeper level. And then we go on to the next level, which is
Where you start to look at those unconscious sins, right? Or omissions. So the things that you're not aware that you're doing that the spirit begins to point out to you, or the places where maybe you should have acted and should have done something and you just didn't, and the spirit points that out to you. Um, and so I think sometimes that's a more painful stage, right? Because you think you're doing pretty good, and then you get that little whisper of conviction, and you're like, oh, yes,
yeah,
right?
exactly. He has this illustration from another author that can be, it's a bit in your face, but he talks about the first part of it's fine. He talks about going on a journey and seeing the walk as you're walking, there's this great open space before you and you see the horizon, you say, oh, that's my journey. But when you get to the horizon, it opens up again and you see the next part. We don't see the whole thing. But then he moves on to this other illustration of a boil or that we have, and
Okay.
we don't realize we have it until it bursts, and then we have to deal with the stench of the part. And he uses the word part, and it's all very confronting. But what
Right.
he's
Yep.
trying to say is we realize these things are actually destructive to our life,
Yeah.
and God shows them to us step by step. Doesn't show it to us all at once because if He did, it'd be really hard to manage for us. And staying open to that process is
Yeah.
really
And that's
good.
his grace at work, isn't it? Because if he
It
showed
is
us everything, and then that last one is right, the those kind of deep-seated attitudes, the way that you
right,
are oriented toward the world.
right.
And I mean, if God just ripped all of those things open at once, we would be overwhelmed. We would feel so ashamed of ourselves that it would break us,
Yes,
right? And
exactly,
but he loves us and he's gracious, and it's just a gentle knock on the door somewhere in the inner house of our mind, right? It says, okay, let's clean out this little closet space today.
exactly.
Right.
That's right. And it
Yeah,
seems to me that those deep-seated attitudes are attached to the way we see ourselves. They're part of our identity, right? That's why there's
absolutely.
deep-seated worldviews, and maybe they're our dysfunctions, but they are things that God tends to work on slowly for us. Um,
Yeah.
which actually does bring us down to this final piece, which we're going to spend a couple of minutes on, which I thought was fantastic.
Yes.
The futility of anxious care, and he points out where Paul says, "Rejoice always," and again I say rejoice, and he talks about the frustration of Paul using this totality term rather than just
Always.
saying go ahead and rejoice when it's a problem. He says always rejoice, and
Always.
yeah, So he
Yeah.
says, talks about we really have to dig down into that. We have to work out what Paul's saying there, and he touches on this issue that obviously he calls it this radical alternative that that Paul is talking about, Jesus' desire to transform us at the point of our identity, the things that cause us to feel worth and value. And anxiety comes from our inability to remain in control. And it's kind of like what you were describing in the car, that place where we begin to live in the rest of allowing Christ to drive the car, and that everything is actually
Yeah.
okay because he's in control.
When we're driving the car, that is our identity. We are the driver. We are the one
Right.
making the decisions. We feel better that, that if something happens, we're going to manage it because we are the one in control. And to give that over challenges directly that identity as the driver, right?
Right.
Is the one who's managing
Exactly.
my life.
Like, have
And
you
then
ever
when
had that
we,
situation where you're a passenger and you slam the brakes on because you don't think the other person's seen something?
yes,
I've done
yes.
that.
Don't ask my husband about that. Um, right. But then that's the thing, like we give the wheel over, but that identity piece still hasn't fully shifted. And so that's what we do. We criticize, we give advice, um,
Right.
right? We slam on the fake brakes because the
Right.
driver doesn't catch it, or we grab onto the
Yep.
handles or something because
Yeah.
we're bracing for impact,
Yeah.
right? But all of
Exactly.
that is that we still haven't shifted out of the identity piece that I'm the driver. And I think that's what this work is how do I shift out of that place? How God is shifting us out of that place so we can say, I'm not the driver, right? I'm the passenger and I'm beloved.
And in response to that, so that's our part. He then talks about the divine response. The divine response is the peace. So that idea of of resting in the front seat and going on the journey, allowing Jesus to be in control, actually is God's peace reigning in our hearts. And of course, because he does this in reference to the passage in Philippians 4, it always amazes me. Or Paul doesn't say that God fixes our circumstances. He says he guards our heart and gives us peace, which is a really revelatory idea. And that's what he talks about in terms of the peace of God. And that leads us to a life of trust. We just live in that
Yeah.
space of trusting God. And it is a
Mhm.
developing reality. It is a process. This is part of the journey. And it's a good part of the journey for us that this we can sometimes panic about the fact that I feel like the need to put the fake brakes on or the to
Right.
grab the wheel. But even that part is the part of learning to trust
Yeah.
Christ at the wheel.
Every one of those times is a time where we get to learn a little bit more to trust that he actually does have it. He actually will care for us, right? That yeah, we learn a little bit more about his character each one of those times. Yeah.
It's wonderful. Thanks, Janet. Appreciate it so much.
Yeah. It's been so
Love
good
you.
to
Love
talk
this
to you.
process and looking
Oh,
forward
it's
to next week.
awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. See ya.
Bye bye.